We're now live on YouTube. We're ready to go whenever you are.
All right. We'll meet the order for the Westminster Planning and Zoning Commission. The first item of the agenda is the minutes from the January 18th meeting. I guess the approvals on both the closed and the
Yes.
we'll do one at a time. I guess we'll do the open meeting first. And the revisions, motion to approve.
Second.
All right, it's been moved second, all in favor?
Aye.
Sure, that's in your folder, the red folder.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's like it. And now we'll review the closed meeting and also occur on the same date, the 18th. You can see the minutes that they signed off, but we can do the motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
All right. The move second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. First item, business will be the public hearing for map amendment 24-01. And we'll open the public hearing now. If anyone wanted to speak, I believe you have to sign in. Does anyone have appropriate people sign in?
Everybody that's going to speak is signed in.
Okay, all right. We'll open the public hearing. Yeah, but
Yes, I will go. Thank you. On October 23rd, 2023, an application for amendment of the City of Westminster zoning map was filed by Kelly Schaefer Miller with Schaefer LLP on behalf of Liberty Road Realty, which is the petitioner, to rezone parcel F1B from its current IR restricted zone to B business zone. Pursuant to zoning ordinance section 164-176, an application for an amendment of the zoning map covering a single tract, which this is, all portions of which are proposed to be classified as one zone, which again this is a local map amendment, which is also referred to as a piecemeal rezoning. The zoning administrator accepted the local map amendment application on January 12, 2024 and designated an application as local map amendment LMA 2401. Following acceptance of the local map amendment application, the zoning administrator shall forward the application to be introduced to the commission at its next meeting for informal purposes. As you recall, on February the 15th, 2024, LMA 2401 was introduced to the commission. Then following the introduction, the application was scheduled for tonight's planning commission public hearing. Following the introduction of LMA 2401 on March 16th, 2023, the petitioner did provide additional information regarding the application, which the additional information that is provided in your staff report. The property is located east of Middletown Pike, which is Route 97, and approximately 320 feet south of the intersection of Meadow Branch Road and Route 97. The property is undeveloped and is approximately 0.174 acres in size and is owned by Gail Beezer and Deborah Ellis. A little bit about the property. The property was annexed into the City of Westminster through Resolution 85-1. It was annexation number 19, effective July 1, 1985. The property is and has been zoned IR restricted zone since annexation into the city. Property has a land use designation of industrial in the City of Westminster Comprehensive Plan as amended in 2017. And the property is located within the W1 water service area and S1 sewer service area. In approximately November 2016, the current owner of the property, Dale Beezer, subdivided parcel F1 as described within the report, creating parcel F1A and parcel F1B. F1B is the property that we're looking at for rezoning. Parcel F1A was approximately 3.392 acres and was transferred to the county commissioners of Carroll County. And parcel F1B, approximately again 1.74 acres, was retained by Mr. Beezer. In other words, Mr. Beezer, the owner of the property, created a 0.174 acre property, and which is the subject of the rezoning and the issues with developing the property, because there was discussion about the property being too small in size. The original zoning and comprehensive rezoning are presumed. This is a little bit about rezoning process, this piecemeal rezoning and change of mistake. The original zoning and comprehensive rezoning are presumed to be correct and may only be changed by the local zoning authority through later comprehensive zoning. If we did a comprehensive rezoning for the entire city, we included the property, or an application for piecemeal zoning, which we're here tonight for. For a piecemeal rezoning, the petitioner must prove either a change in the character of the neighborhood since the original zoning or last comprehensive rezoning, or there was a mistake was made in the current zoning of the property for a piecemeal rezoning to occur. So in other words, the neighborhood changed so drastically, and it can be demonstrated that this property should no longer be IR, it should be another zoning district. Or, and this is very general in nature, or at one point at the point we originally zoned IR, the city made a mistake at that time for rezoning, or at the time of annexation and zoning, and we had never updated it with the comprehensive plan. So those are the two options you have before you to make a determination for rezoning. As I say, for the character of the neighborhood, the city has agreed to define the neighborhood as provided in petitioner exhibit 5, and it's depicted in the staff report. There are city and county properties located within the neighborhood. The zoning districts found within the neighborhood are C, Conservation District, R 10,000 Resident District, I-1 Light Industrial District. In the county and city zoning districts of PI Planned Industrial Zone, IR Restricted Zone, and B Business Zone. The only B Business Zone property within the neighborhood is the adjacent property to the south. I don't know if we have them. As you can see in red, the star is the property that we're looking at, is 1.174 acre. So this is 842 Littlestown Pike, Westminster, 21158. This adjacent property was previously zoned IR Restricted Industrial in the county, but at the time of annexation 68, the property was rezoned by the city to B Business Zone. And that was effective May 11, 2017. So that when this went through the annexation petition process, we had the ability to make a comparable zoning choice compared to the county district into the city. It was determined that B was comparable to the IR, and so B was allowed to be applied versus the city IR. A little bit different than the property to the north that was IR in the county, and when we annexed it in, we maintained the IR zoning district. The property, again, is zoned IR restricted zone and is undeveloped. And the purpose of the rezoning is to allow the property to be used as a parking lot for the commercial development proposed on that adjacent property to the south, that B Business Zone property. It's intended to be a Dunkin' Donuts, and this property is intended to be a commercial parking lot that would serve the Dunkin' Donuts development. A commercial parking lot is a permitted use in the B Business Zone, but it is not allowed in the IR restricted zone. Hence the need of the request for rezoning to meet the parking requirements for the Dunkin' Donuts. This property is needed for that project moving forward. The land use designation of the property again is industrial. The land use element of the comprehensive plan states that industrial areas are found on the outskirts of downtown Westminster and in several industrial parks along the Maryland Route 97 corridor. The land use allows for a variety of industrial and accessory uses. Regulations ensure that industrial users do not become a nuisance to surrounding properties. Again, the last comprehensive zoning map amendment, CMA 1001, was approved by the Mayor Common Council by Ordinance 819 in October 25, 2010, and at that time it was found that IR was still the appropriate zoning district for the property that was not part of that comprehensive rezoning. As you go through your review, we look at approval for rezoning or approval criteria for rezoning, and this is found in zoning ordinance section 164, 187, and this is outlined in the report as well. I'm just going to highlight these elements that you take into account when you look at the criteria. One is the purpose of this chapter. I'm not going to get too into that. That's the purpose of the zoning ordinance, health, safety, welfare, and it does talk a little about business industrial. That's again in your ordinance. We look at population change. This property is approximately 0.17 acres in size. It's unlikely that any substantial residential development could occur. Residential is allowed in both the IR and be business, but multifamily higher density. We're not gonna see that on a 0.174 acre lot. So with that, and with the petitioner proposing a commercial parking lot, therefore any development of the property will have very limited to no impact to the population change. We look at availability of public facilities. Again, public water and sewer lines exist within the Maryland Route 97 right of way in front of the property. The adjacent property to the south is, which is proposed, the south is currently served by public water and sewer. And there would be no need for public water and sewer for this property itself. There'll be a commercial parking lot. So again, there would be no need to actually provide water and sewer to this lot. You look at present and future transportation patterns. Maryland 97 is owned and maintained by Maryland State Highway Administration. It's a 2-lane roadway which runs in north-south direction and has posted speeds of 40 miles per hour in the vicinity of the property. There are no immediate plans for improvements by State Highway to Route 97, at least this section. And in the report, you'll see that 97 was improved further north, but this section, there's no immediate plans for improvement. State Highway will have to improve any access into the southern site for the Dunkin' Donuts property. That is part of the site plan review that would do coordinate with State Highway for appropriate access and safe access into that property. And you'll see that in Exhibit A in the staff report, a little snapshot of the Dunkin' Donuts development and how this coordinates with that. We look at compatibility with existing and proposed development for the area. The neighborhood again is dominated by industrial zone and developed properties located within the city and county, north and south of and including the property. There are few residentially zoned properties and retail commercial zoned property within the neighborhood. A commercial parking lot at the property serving a commercial use on the adjacent property to the south is not incompatible with existing and proposed commercial and industrial development in the neighborhood. Furthermore, as the property is only approximately 0.174 acres in size, staff does not envision an incompatible use capable of being established at the property. Another element is the recommendation of the commission that we're seeking tonight. So I really can't get into that element. And then we also look at the relationship of such proposed amendment to the city's plan. And again, the land use designation in the surrounding city properties is industrial. The only property again in the B business zone is the adjacent property, which is intended to be developed along with this property if this rezone is approved. Transitioning from IR restricted industrial in the county to B business zone in the city. In the city, both cases did not increase densities, so the request wouldn't alter any density requirements for the property. So following the public hearing tonight, the commission shall submit a report and recommendation to the zoning administrator. Upon acceptance of the commission's report, the zoning administrator shall set the application for public hearing with the mayor and common council. The mayor and common council may approve or deny the application for piecemeal rezoning. In approving a piecemeal rezoning request, the mayor and common council may impose additional restrictions, conditions, and limitations that it considers appropriate to preserve, improve, or protect the character and design of the lands and improvements being zoned or rezoned, or to the surrounding adjacent lands and improvements. I don't want to get into my recommendation. I'd like at this point the applicant or the petitioner to provide their report, and I'd like to provide rebuttal and then provide my recommendation following, if that's okay with the air.
Do you want to wait for the applicant to give their remarks, or do you have any questions for
Thank you. Good evening. I'll remain seated so that I don't block anyone else. Kelly Schaefer Miller here tonight on behalf of the applicant. As you will recall, I think most of you know the one board member was not present at last month's meeting. We had a good discussion about this. I feel like I laid a lot of the groundwork and foundation as well as in Mr. Depot's staff report. I did just want to briefly kind of run through some of the important factors here. Again, this property is has historically been used as a parking lot that complements the adjacent property that is zoned to the business classification for the city. So historically, it's been used that way. there's a lot of, I mean, we could get lost in the history of this property, quite frankly, but I think of importance, I wanna note that that portion, this small parcel that we're talking about here tonight was annexed into the city in 85. It was not divided until later in time, and that's because at the time that it was annexed into the city, it was annexed as part of a much larger annexation that was likely initiated by the county. It was not applicant initiated in terms of Mr. Feeser, who currently owns the property, because at that point in time, he did not own the property. Then, Mr. Feeser obtained this portion of the property to presumably maintain the parking lot that complements the adjoining residential. He did deed that other portion to the county, that was used for the airport expansion, or at least there's an easement over it for the airport expansion, so it was not. I know that Mr. Depot kind of suggests that we created the small parcel and therefore we can't argue that these restrictions are so great on it that it needs to be rezoned. But I would submit to you that actually it was not done at that impetus. It was done because the county needed property for the airport. It was not done knowing that we were going to restrict any future development of this property. And kind of to further that point, if the city had really looked at that property in 2010, the date of the most recent comprehensive rezoning that Mr. Depot points out, I think they would have identified that it wasn't used in conformance with their industrial zone and it would have been rezoned. So I think there is still a mistake argument. I understand that staff is suggesting to you and has issued a favorable staff report on the change in the character of the neighborhood legal argument here, but I would suggest to you that there is still an opportunity for a mistake argument as I presented last time. The mistake argument is not always a blatant disregard for information. It can just be an overlooked item that occurred at the time, which I think you could submit that it was overlooked that this property was not being used in accordance with its industrial zoning district in 2010 and should have been rezoned in conformance with the southern property that it's always served to accommodate. The size of the property is very relevant here because it really cannot be developed with anything else. It cannot be developed with anything else in the existing industrial zoning district or likely in the business zoning district unless it's used in concert with the southern parcel. And so I do think that that's a practical consideration that you should take into account. I also note one thing that I forgot to point out to Mr. Depot as a change in the character of the neighborhood, but that has come to me in tonight's meeting, which is that the city has adopted a medical or now a cannabis overlay zone since the last comprehensive rezoning, and that a good portion of property in this area is subject to that overlay zone. That overlay zone allows for dispensaries and more retail uses in that nature in some properties that are industrially zoned out there. So I would submit that that is an additional point in favor of the change in the character of the neighborhood argument that's been submitted to you. I will also remind you that at last month's meeting, I provided everyone with a copy of a very brief legal memorandum, a few photographs of the site, and an affidavit of Mr. Dale Feeser with some supporting airport Delta communication document. Mr. Feeser also spoke as the property owner was available at last month's meeting, so I appreciate you hearing. I would like to make sure that all of that is part of, what you're considering here tonight, and staff has considered that. But I just wanted to kind of refresh your recollection, if you will, from last month's meeting. I would request tonight that you forward a favorable recommendation to the mayor and common council. I think that the staff report walks through all of the legal elements here and lays out all of the facts. But or maybe the medical cannabis, which I just threw at Mr. Depot as an additional point in favor of this petition. So I would ask that you forward that staff report along with the favorable recommendation to mayor and council. We are all here and available for questions. I have Mr. Jim Mathias from DEC right behind me, and Shizal Patel, who is a representative of the contract purchaser of the property. He was also present. They were both present at last month's meeting as well. I understand that this has been advertised as a public hearing. The state code does not require that this body conduct a public hearing, but mayor and council will conduct a public hearing. So I am available to answer any questions of you or any other interested member here, as is Mr. Matthias and Mr. Patel. But unless you would like me to put on a formal presentation with additional testimony, I think we've really presented the substance of all of the relevant information to you already. So I will leave that at your discretion, if you would like to hear a formal presentation. But like I said, I think that most of the relevant information has already been presented.
Yeah, but do you think you have the gist of what we're?
I read this.
I do have a question. You talked about the airport. When you say that it was required for the airport, you mean there's an easement on it for purposes of, I guess they call that a free landing area. So it's not like it's needed for any expansion or anything. It's just part of that clearance zone. Is that what you mean?
Our small part, the small
Yeah.
parcel that's currently owned by Mr. Feeser, yes, correct. That is subject to a navigation easement, which does restrict development above a certain height. And that letter that you saw at last meeting was DPW from the county acknowledging that parking could still be accommodated on that parcel, even though you couldn't construct a building that interfered with the height. The adjoining larger property that you see to the north, that kind of wraps around, that is industrially zoned, that is owned by the county. And that I'm certain is either subject to an easement or the county anticipates just preserving that for airport expansion.
When you talk about, annexation, having done quite a number of those. If you annex property and change the zoning, it's a whole different world. Because then you have to have, the county has to actually concur with that. If you bring it into the same zone, then it's a whole different world. So it probably was just done and left that way because at the time, there wasn't any issue of how it was used or anything like that.
That's my assumption as well, is that the county didn't have an interest in recognizing the parking, they just brought it all in as the equivalent zoning district.
I would agree that it probably wasn't looked at that closely in 2010 because it wasn't. Just didn't raise a red flag. Discuss it. Any other questions? Do we have anyone else going to speak?
I don't think we have anybody else signed up for this application to speak tonight.
You do want to,
I'll concur that yes, the cannabis overlay district, it was a medical cannabis that was created, followed by that was then repealed and replaced with a cannabis overlay district, and there are properties within the neighborhood that do allow or are part of that overlay district, so that is something that new, something that's happened. You can see the little yellow hatched areas. Where we actually have a cannabis business. I don't want to get too much into that, but yes, that is accurate. That there is a change that's occurred in the neighborhood as defined. I don't want to get too detailed about the use and not whether it's legal or not legal. That's in the report. But outside of that, I think the staff along with Ms. Miller, we highlighted changes and I think staff concurs several of the changes in the neighborhood. And then with that, and based on the information the staff report and discussion tonight, the zoning administrator recommends to the Planning and Zoning Commission Board of Recommendation to approve the local map amendment LMA 2401 to the Mayor and Common Council. Though the zoning administrator believes the petitioner failed to demonstrate the mistake in the zoning administrator believes that there is reasonable information to demonstrate a change in the character of the neighborhood since the original zoning and last comprehensive rezoning or a piecemeal rezoning to occur. And that is my report.
all right, thank you. My one question is, do we, when we make a recommendation, if it's for the to allow the change, should we state which of the two reasons we believe in, or does that not matter as far as the recommendation?
I think it would be important, because a decision has to be written for this, that you provide, it would be helpful to actually go, I think, to the staff report and whether you concur with the criteria that is outlined and that has been met The discussion, again, this we help from this board, which she's trying to draft the decision for you. If you want to look at page 6, Born, that's why I highlighted the criteria necessary to go through the process. Again, staff believes it's been addressed. And then I do believe it would be helpful if you did make some level of determination or decision as to, one, whether there was substantial change in the neighborhood, or two, that there was a mistake, and then provide information as to how you believe that's occurred.
I can see there be a third choice being both. That's what I
Or
was-
you could argue both, yeah.
That's,
We argue one.
Or not.
We argue none.
yes, but we could.
Can I ask a procedural question? I was under the impression that tonight, if they agreed with the staff report, the planning commission could forward the staff report and say, for these reasons, we favorably recommend to mayor and council, which would then at least expedite our ability to get in front of mayor and council for a public hearing, rather than waiting another month to come back, which would be a third appearance before this commission.
And I think we're still looking at a written decision being provided by the planning commission, that we would take that forward to the mayor and county council. I don't think it would necessarily slow things down. We could have, the plan would have been to have, essentially I'm looking at April 22nd for mayor and county council, which occurs following the planning commission meeting. That's their second meeting. Because of advertising purposes, I didn't want to advertise public hearing until at least we were before the planning commission for discussion and recommendation.
Well, we can close the public hearing.
Yes, you can close
And
the
make a
public-
recommendation tonight.
Yes, yes.
So we're gonna work through it, it's your, it's on your.
Well, then it would, it's again, this is where I'm looking for the city attorney to provide an actual written decision by the planning commission that you then view and concur with, that we would take that written decision as an exhibit to the mayor and county council.
Or are we providing a written decision or are we providing a recommendation? Now, the mayor and council, I agree, has to have a written decision, but I don't know that we're.
No, it is a recommendation to the mayor.
And
not
that,
a written decision.
so I understand, Mark, and had you not prepared this third staff report, I would be inclined to concur with you that something would need to be put together along these lines. But because this staff report substantially walks through all of the elements, if this commission agrees with the staff report, it would be my suggestion that the staff report get forwarded on to mayor and common council with a specificity saying we agree with these points of the staff report. And forwarding, I would request a favorable recommendation to mayor and council. So that way we could get it advertised and go to public hearing at mayor and council.
And I think it's what, as Mr. Depot said, that under the scenario where we bring it back for their formal approval, it's not gonna slow down getting to the mayor and council. You're gonna get to the mayor and council on the same date regardless. It is my recommendation that you'll obviously do close the public hearing, deliberate this evening, and we would come back with a written recommendation for you all to adopt and agree.
Questions by the. Green? Alright, well, let's close the hearing at this time. And then any discussion. Thoughts?
Well,
ABC?
I don't have a problem with the rezoning. My personal opinion is the mistake argument is the correct argument. Because it's very limited to this property. What I'm concerned about saying the character of the neighborhood's changed, is that's gonna serve as a basis then for anybody else that comes along with a piece of property to argue, well, I just found that in another case, and that kind of bothers me a little bit. But the rezoning itself, no, it doesn't. It's just a question of which is the right way to go. It's not something I'm gonna lose sleep over, but still, I just wanted to speak my mind.
We have to say one way or the other. Yeah, I think you should look at each of the elements of change or mistake separately. And discuss whether you believe that there is enough evidence in the record to support. Each one, potentially both, or potentially.
It's hard to say. In my mind, it seems.
Right. Well, you have to pick one, pick a mistake then. Worry about doing a change in the neighborhood.
See, the one gets a recommendation, so I have a motion.
I think we're gonna need, I'm sorry, I think we're gonna need something very specific. So if you look at
Yeah.
the mistake ruling, it can't just be simply, I think there was a mistake. I think you have to demonstrate that the city erred at the time it was annexed and it was requested to be IR, it is IR, and that through comprehensive rezoning, that it was that the city erred in zoning of property.
And Mark, just to clarify, because I feel like there was a question, they can find both if they want, they can find both, they can find one, they can find another, or they can find none.
But to find it, I think we need those findings.
No, I
Find it.
understand,
That's
I
what I'm-
felt like
that's
there
what I'm
was some
asking you.
uncertainty about what
I'm
had
good.
happened, so I just wanted to
I'm
make sure
good.
everybody was.
Yeah, it's
On the same page.
100% their decision, but if you, whatever decision you're gonna make, and we need those findings as to how you believe either change or mistake has occurred.
Thinking. So, thinking. State purposes. Zoning requires showing that the underlying assumptions of premises. State body.
Well,
You know, we're incorrect. I think. That's assuming it was actually reviewed at all.
well, the historical nature of the property was, it was always a parking lot for phasers. When I say phasers, meaning the property, and there's different businesses there, it was always that. As long as, I've been here since 1987, it was always used like that. It was never used any differently, whether it was zoned IR, or whether it's beer, if it had been zoned agriculture, it was still used as a park size. So I think when it came in, it was just a mistake not to have rezoned it, be business with the next property, that's what I think. And that's my, I think it was an error, just, but not an error of like, you know, like somebody was trying to get over, I think it was just purely not really looked at as that combined property, that's what I think.
I think it's just oversight.
I think it was an oversight, it's not an honest oversight, but it's not.
So you thought, so your thought was that the mistake was that they failed to take into consideration the existing use of the property. as a parking.
Couldn't be any more clear.
I agree with that.
But yeah, I mean, we all drive 97, we all know how it's been, at least. That's mine, that's mine. I mean, it's that,
So you believe that in 1985, when it was annexed, and the petition for annexation requested IR, similar to the IR in the county, that the city erred in not rezoning it to be business.
Or during the 2010 comprehension. As you stated in your.
I think it was just an oversight that those two properties always function as one. It's just the fact that it was outside the city and there was a line between them. And made it a legal parcel, but the property was always used as one. It was never any different. That's what the applicant wants to do, is use it as one property. So I understand, I just think it was an oversight.
Agree.
I just want to say something about the timing of all of this too, just for your thoughts. But when you say the in 2010, when the last comprehensive plan, the property next to it was still IR. It wasn't, so it's not like, that was B business and it was a mistake because they always work in tandem and that was business and this stayed IR. The property didn't come into the city as business until 2017.
I know,
So,
I know what you're saying about the zoning, but as far as the property's use, it was always business. There was freezers and then there was various commercial stores in there. So it was always used as a business. I think Donna Shabonko had a store there at one point. But, so I understand what you're saying, yes.
So
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
I'm
one,
okay with that, or I'm
okay, if you want to
You come up with a set. Put that in the proposal. You put on it.
Well, I move we make a recommendation based on mistake and the reasons that the city attorney articulated. I think that the properties were historically used together. It was just an oversight that the zoning wasn't matched.
Second.
All right, so is that a clear enough motion?
I don't know what you mean by wasn't matched. Remember that the last comprehensive rezoning, the property to the south was IR, wasn't B business. It was equal zoning to this property, the last I'm just trying to understand what was the match.
I know it was zoned IR, but the property was used in a commercial fashion. The Features property was always used in a commercial fashion. It's been a store. It's been different generations.
So since it was used as a business, that which led to when it was annexed, that's why it was B business, which then,
Yes.
okay, now, okay.
Yes,
I understand.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right. The move second, all in favor of favorable recommendation as such to a mistake. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then, is there a finding that it also meets the requirements of section 164, 187?
Yes. And that it needs, we met, the motion would be that we make a favorable recommendation, based on mistake. And that it meets all the requirements of the city zoning. That satisfies you?
Second.
All right, let's re-vote. It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Yes. Now we will open the public hearing, second public hearing for ordinance 4-24-02 for a amendment.
This one finished your night. So she'll get the speed, don't you worry. She'll have her turn. So yeah.
I want to see the shirts, Rudolph early. No, I'm saying it's like, is it the same shirt? Like, okay, got it.
So on January 16th, 2024.
We should sell those. I got a good job.
You should have brought a t-shirt, because we talked about it. Rest here too, so. On January 16th, 2024, the owners of Rudolph Girls Bookstore contacted the city regarding their wish to operate a bookstore used at 19 Liberty Street, Westminster. The property is zoned CB Central Business Zone and is subject to the regulations of the zoning ordinance. Currently, bookstores is identified as a permitted use only in the mixed-use infill zone and the neighborhood commercial zone. However, bookstores is not listed as permitted use in the CB zone. Standard zoning administration, the practice requires that if a use is specifically listed in a zoning ordinance, such as bookstore, is listed in the city's zoning ordinance as an allowed use in mixed use in neighborhood commercial zone, then that use must also be listed in the zoning ordinance in the zoning district in which the use is proposed to be commenced. So in other words, because the zoning ordinance specifically labels a use as bookstore in the zoning ordinance in a zoning district, bookstore has to be equally listed in the CB zone. And as I stated, it isn't, which creates the issue that we're here tonight trying to resolve. Furthermore, the zoning administrator does not have the authority to add a new use to the zoning district or to determine that two distinct uses listed in the ordinance are the same. So I can't say use listed as bookstore and there's another use listed as gift and jewelry shops are the same use because they're both specific uses listed in the ordinance. These are the issues you run into as we're dealing with our 1979 ordinance. So then to add a new use, we need to do a text amendment, which I hear tonight. City staff introduced the concept of amending the zoning ordinance to allow bookstores in the downtown zoning districts, the CC, DB, and CB zones, to the Mayor and Common Council at its January 22nd, 2024 work session meeting. Staff believes that a bookstore is similar in character to other uses allowed in these zoning districts. Bookstores will not have any impact greater than these other similar uses in those zoning districts. With that, the Mayor and Common Council supported bringing a draft text amendment to add bookstores as a permitted use in these districts. While working on the bookstore text amendment, staff began researching other uses, also in the mixed-use infill zone, the B business zone, as well as the CC, DB, and CB zones, to determine whether there were other uses allowed in one of these zoning districts that should be allowed in the other zones. Staff has identified several uses that should be amended, deleted, or added as part of the initial bookstore text amendment in an effort to alleviate future downtown use issues. The zoning administration notes that bookstore does not include an adult bookstore as an adult bookstore as an adult entertainment activity use. On February 12th, 2024, the Mayor and Common Council introduced Ordinance 2024-02 and referred the ordinance to the Planning Commission for its review and recommendation to the Mayor and Common Council. The Department of Community Planning and Development recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission forward a recommendation to approve Ordinance 2024-02 to the Mayor and Common Council as introduced at the February 12th meeting. I'm available for any questions.
Go ahead, clean things up.
As to how it could use further cleaning, this is really just taking what we currently have in the ordinance. We weren't trying to create new uses. We were just looking at current listed uses and where they should be, why they weren't there. We dealt with this with the art gallery use, if you recall, same thing, same issue. Hopefully, at least we can address the best we can for the time being until we update the entire ordinance.
Any other questions for staff before we have the applicant?
I think that the way you're going on this is exactly, what you said is exactly true. Because when I was in your position in 1987, there was discretion given, uses like, and there were some things approved downtown that people weren't comfortable with. So the ordinance was changed to say, to be very specific. If it wasn't on the list, it wasn't allowed. With the intent that then we would come back and do a zoning ordinance to add it. It would be a public, transparent process to do it. I think that back then it was a concern about pawn shops, adult bookstores, and things like that maybe weren't the best to have downtown. So what's happening right now is exactly what was envisioned, that you come back later, have an open public hearing, have a process and do it. So this is good.
And what we're finding is when new zoning districts are created, like the neighborhood commercial zone, and used to listed, at that time, they created new uses that weren't listed. And so bookstores were always an allowed use in these zoning districts because we had bookstores there and we had bike sales and shop is not allowed in downtown. But they were there. But when the new use came in and then listed those specific uses, it really makes it difficult. And that's what, so bookstore was never listed before. Once it was added to that new zoning district, and then without looking at the entire ordinance as a whole and where else it should go, it creates these issues.
One of the most prominent businesses downtown on Main Street was Locust Books. And, you know, because it was, you know, grandfathered, it could continue to operate.
Yeah.
But if Tim Bryson came back now, I don't know if he's still alive and tried to do it, he would run into the same problem this lady's running into.
Tim Bryson buys his books from us.
Oh, there you go. So, yeah, so that's how the thing comes full circle.
Yeah, we have.
Yes, so, my name is, Allison Amos, this is my sister Nikki Rhodes Whaley, we own Rudolph Girls. Author Nero Gaiman said that a town isn't a town without a bookstore. And while we're not conceited enough to think that Westminster was not Westminster before we opened Rudolph Girls, we do believe Westminster is better for us having opened. Whether it's filling the hole left for so many by the closing of Locust Books, or the collaboration and support we've given to over a dozen downtown businesses and nonprofits, having an independent bookstore makes Westminster better. In the 6 months before we opened, we met with many independent bookstore owners throughout the country, and one thing quickly became clear. Among small businesses in any given community, the independent bookstore is the biggest cheerleader for them all. It has absolutely made our lives better in the last 3 years to be that cheerleader in downtown Westminster. And I think that it's appropriate in that context that introducing this bookstore text amendment will hopefully make things a lot easier for a lot of other small businesses going forward. Westminster will continue to be Westminster with or without a bookstore, but we do hope the city will support us and allow the presence of an independent bookstore to continue to make a difference in our very favorite small town.
Thank you. And are there any other people listening to the?
I knew we had
I
nobody
don't
else
list
signed up.
myself for this, but please favorably recommend. I wore my shirt around today to the county with clients, everybody recognized it, like the library, they were like, your shirt? Everybody at the county, so, yeah, so.
Done and text amendment for your signature.
You can put me down for everything, I'm here to support her, I think it only does good things for the city, so please.
Questions?
Forward a favorable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well,
They, even liquor stores that they'll restrict this.
One.
first,
But at least some of them were just.
As amended, if you had changed.
Got it.
Yeah.
Have a restaurant will serve.
first we'll close the public hearing and then,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission forward a recommendation to approve ordinance 2024-02 to the mayor and common council as introduced by the mayor and common council on February 12, 2024.
Second.
approved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Very unanimous.
Thank you.
So next time for the people here, it's not like.
Next item, sign permits, Ingram. This is on.
Yes.
So the applicant is requesting the sign permit application approval for a sign that is greater than 64 square feet, but not exceeding 125 square feet. For the proposed new business of Honey Grow, that is at 343 Baltimore Boulevard, which is Westminster Station Phase 2. The property is approximately 7.76 acres. Here is where it is. On February 26, 2024, the city received a sign application submitted by Christina Day of Empire Graphics LLC for Honey Grow, which, like I said, is located at 343 Baltimore Boulevard in the business zone. Honey Grow is a restaurant that is an allowed use in that zone, and the proposed building would have a mounted sign for Honey Grow, which is 67.62 square feet. And here is the image. I know it might be difficult to see, but it is in your packet a little bit bigger. As you may remember from our January meeting when we did talk about signage, signs greater than 64 square feet but not exceeding 125 square feet must be approved by this body. Anything smaller does have the ability to be approved administratively. And so since this is, like I said, 67.62 square feet, the commission shall take into consideration the following factors: safety, the size, configuration, elevation, the location of the property, existing signs that are already on the property and neighboring ones, the aesthetics. And so we ask you to take into account all of those things. We think that as the proposed Honey Grow sign is like I said, a building mounted sign, the zoning administrator doesn't find that there are any traffic or pedestrian safety concerns. It's matching a lot of what's already out there. And so we are asking or recommending that the commission consider approval of sign application 1947 to allow the building mounted sign of 67.62 square feet for Honey Grow restaurant. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Is this any different from their other signs? I mean, I've been to a few of their other locations.
I don't believe so. I think it's very similar to everything that they typically have. And in the back, we do have some larger pictures if you need to see it.
So this comes to force because it's 3.62 square feet above.
Yes. So yeah, we can only administratively do it, so.
Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, we're here and they were not interested in making it any smaller, so they understood as soon as the process that we. That's gonna call you. I know, I know.
I move that the planning and zoning commission approve sign permit application 1947 to allow a building mounted sign of 67.62 square feet for Honey Grow at 343 Baltimore Boulevard, Westminster, Maryland.
I will,
Let's see how big it is.
I will second that.
It's been moved in second, all in favor?
It's important that Tiana be there because that way the record will show that she's here, so when she gets her big pay. You know, there's nothing.
Well, I'll take it. Ready.
All right. Carroll County Economic Development Study presentation.
Chair Beaver, how are you? And everyone, thank you. I was mentioning the price today. I don't think I've ever sat in the audience in front of planning commission. I've always been over there, so it's a first for me. But good to see everyone. I'll use the clicker.
I think it's the one, maybe,
Okay.
let me, I just want to share them.
Yeah, the people, somebody's watching it, can they see the slides?
Yep, yeah, so I'm sharing it on the screen with you and also for everyone that's watching it with us today.
All right, well, thank you all for having me. Economic development and land use study. Well, actually, I'll get into that, but let's go through the slides.
The clicker or pointer.
There we go.
Let me move this. I'm just gonna move it so that it's not in the way.
All right. So as you know, I'm Andrew Gray from Carroll County. So this is a list of people who were involved at the end of the Economic Development and Land Use Study, from Christopher Hine, who's the Director of the Department of Planning and Land Management, Mary Lane, who's the Bureau Chief, myself, also Economic Development, Paige Sunderland, many of you know her, and also our county consultant, Courtney Powell and John Stover. So this was a joint effort. This was a collaboration between the Bureau of Comprehensive Planning, Economic Development, County Economic Development, and the county consultant. So what this report was, it was an impartial review on current economic conditions in the county and land use. And what this did was it consolidated data and citizen input regarding economic development, the economic development status of the county and related future concepts, which will be discussed shortly. So as all of you know, at the heart of any good planning process is citizen participation, public engagement. Because how can a government expect quality citizen feedback if the public is not consulted? That is why we held several public engagement sessions. We had not only our posters in English, but in Spanish for our Hispanic community in Carroll County. And I know some of the people in this room were at some of our public outreach sessions. Most notably, one right here, a block from here at Exploration Commons, where we had 2 outreach sessions for the Economic Development and Land Use Study. So the objective today is just to, the report is meant to be a resource to help inform upcoming discussions regarding the master plan. This is one of several components. So for instance, we have a rural village study. There's a housing study that you've heard previously. So these will go help inform the backbone of the county master plan. All right, and also the study updates have always been posted on the Carroll County Bureau of Comprehensive Planning website, so the public can always click that or go to the website and get information about where the study, I'm going to say was because it's already been completed. But like I've mentioned at several of these outreach events, if you come up or if anybody wants to scan that QR code and it will take you to the Bureau of Comprehensive Planning webpage. Whoops, I'm moving it. Whoops, what's going on here? And then you can follow along with this as well, the study document that I have right here. So without further ado, we will get into the study. So just where we are on the project timeline, the kickoff was in October 2022 and it ended at the end of December when this information was presented to the Board of County Commissioners. There's been different phases to this project, 3 different phases, from public outreach and engagement plan. We held a countywide site visit tour. We went through focus groups, stakeholder interviews, up until the draft study and the acceptance of the study by the county. There we go. So with total public engagement, there were over 350 total participants that resulted from all of our different forms of outreach. So like I mentioned, we had open houses, focus groups, even a student survey to just get a handle on what do students in Carroll County, what's their perception of economic development, them moving out of college into careers in this county. Okay, there we go. So for the record, I'm only hitting it once. So the economic profile This is the first of the sections in the economic development and land use study. So this profile highlights economic development in the county. So, there we go. Population trends. So as this slide mentions, Carroll County's population increased by 25,000 people between 2000 and 2023. That is 16%. Now, with 25,000 may seem a lot, but as you can tell, with the percent growth between, with taking into consideration Howard and Frederick counties, that is a lot lower. So also for regional economic activity. So as you can see from the the metropolitan statistical area, Carroll County has 3.1% of the Baltimore MSA, which includes Carroll, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Hartford County, Howard County, Queen Anne's County, Anne Arundel County. Did I say Howard County? Okay, so as you can see, this is smaller compared to Baltimore County and Baltimore City. Baltimore County share of the MSA is 26.8, Baltimore City's 23.1, and we are 3.1%. All right, so for business and industries, so right now the largest is the construction, healthcare, and social assistance, and professional, scientific, and technical service industries. Right now, there are over 54,000 people employed in Carroll County in around 6,200 businesses in our county. So for our employment projections and trends, Carroll County's employment-based projections are lower than the regions as a whole. The region is 15%, we're 11%, but the unemployment rate at the county remains at a 10-year low. And then for workforce characteristics, so residents working and traveling 24 miles or less to work. So 70% of Carroll County's population works elsewhere, different jurisdiction. 70% of Carroll's population, works in different counties, and just the note, if anybody scans the studies or goes onto the website and goes to page 31, there's a little chart here, a little graphic that shows 29,347 people come into the county. There are 24,850 people that live and work in the county. But then on the back end, you have over 58,000 people who leave the county for work. And also teleworking benefits. As we all know, there's many benefits in teleworking, especially brought on with the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, the Planning and Zoning Commission met virtually for a year during that pandemic. And these are some of the economic support resources available in Carroll County. All right, so for the real estate market, this is the second section, which is a high-level real estate market overview of the county. So median home prices are rising and the number of homes sold are decreasing. So right behind thank you, Andrea. So home prices have increased by 4.9, and yet the 4.8% decline in the number of homes sold a year ago. And also the average rent has increased, but Carroll's rent is lower than the Baltimore metropolitan region. So for commercial trends, so for the office submarket, 0 square feet of new supply has been added to the 2.9 million square foot mid-sized office submarket in the past 5 years. The hotel hospitality submarket the last time a new large-scale hotel was developed in the county was in 1989. So for the industrial submarket, for the 11.4 million square feet, which is mid-sized, 134,000 square feet was added in the last 3 years. And then for the entertainment submarket, 31,000 square feet per year of new supply was added over the last 2 years. And then 132,000 square feet of new supply is projected within the next 8 quarters. And also, just to note that between 2008 and 2023, Carroll County had a commercial net absorption of over 2.8 million square feet. For development functions, just to remember that policies of the county can influence whether potential residents and businesses locate in Carroll County. So and I know many of you may know this, but just a refresher for many people, since the departments, there was some little rearranging over at the Carroll County was Department of Planning. Now that Department of Planning, as you probably already know, is now the Bureau of Comprehensive Planning, up under the combined Bureau of Land and, Bureau, how can I not remember my? Planning, yes, there we are, Planning and Land Management. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go off memory here. So under the Department of Planning and Land Management, you have the Bureau of Development Review that reviews the site plans. And under the Department of Public Works, they review the building permits. Also, in the past year, Carroll County has implemented a new improvement, which is a priority review process, and that would go through the Board of County Commissioners. And also, the Department of Planning and Land Management made an easy-to-use website for non-residential development and property subdivision inquiries. So for zoning and land use analysis outlines the county's land use makeup and associated policies. So for the percentage of land area, and just to note, planning via future land use maps implements zoning. As you all know, zoning is the law. That is why the forthcoming master plan process is so important. So the percent of zone land in the county, so as you can see, agricultural and conservation makes up 85%. The rest, residential, commercial, industrial, and so forth, makes up 15%. So where is the county going to grow? So from a comparison on the right-hand side there, so with agriculture and conservation zoning, Carroll has 85%, around 85% of the land area. Frederick has around 83%. Hartford has around 72%. And Baltimore has around 67%. And this includes the Hereford area outside that urban-rural demarcation line. So our designated growth areas and municipal growth areas. So out of those, Freedom has the largest amount of developable land. Westminster, right here, has the largest amount of vacant industrial land. And economic opportunities from the consultant study is mentioned that opportunity is centered around 140 and 26. So for growth scenarios, this provides guidance on economic growth for the future and to show what rate of growth most people thought was most feasible for moving forward in the county. So this preferred, so there were 4 possible growth scenarios, from no growth to high growth. So 78% of stakeholders indicated they would prefer low to moderate growth. And that low to moderate growth would come out to this scenario C from A, B, C, and D. It would be scenario C, which is 350,000 to 550,000 average annual commercial absorption. Moderately significant changes to our existing future land use categories, future expansion of the existing designated growth areas. And really, at the end of the day, it's the relationship of expenditures to revenues will rise at a more balanced rate, leading towards a low deficit and balanced budget. And I mentioned this during the county commissioner meeting, I was very surprised because when people came and to our outreach sessions, the county outreach sessions, people knew that, wait a minute, we need to have some type of economic growth here to sustain the quality of life. So scenario C, it's in line with that. So for opportunities, how can the county grow in a way that fosters an enhanced economy while preserving what makes Carroll County, Carroll County? So, there were a little over 1,000 vacant acres zoned for economic growth in the entirety of Carroll County. The county is a little less than 300,000 acres in size. That means there's 0.35% of total area in the county, which is currently zoned for economic growth. So proactively targeting key industry sectors can facilitate desirable growth. All right, so next are the top 5 site opportunities. These were identified as the top 5 out of a whole list in the, and more is in the Economic Development and Land Use Study of opportunities. And these are mainly around, as obviously see from one of them, Westminster, then you also have Freedom, Mount Airy, and Tawnytown. And who's following with the QR code, that would be page number 86. That starts on page number 86. So for targeted industries, more information, and just to mention to everyone, that is between 112 and 118. And as you can see, those 3 correspond to these right here. And Mr. Depot pointed out when the meeting started that looks like monopoly, and Mr. Depot is absolutely correct, because one of the outreach things that the county, or I should say, one of the outreach exercises the county wanted to do, and the consultant did a wonderful job of coming up with this. Instead of just the normal having somebody speak in the front of the room, we wanted to have this more engaging. So there were many of these boards. These are just the 3 you see there, but there were many more of these boards. And when participants came in, they were given money, monopoly money. And what they were each supposed to do with all the different industries is they had a certain amount of money, and in front of each of these boards, there were little boxes. And how much of your money do you want to invest in each industry? So how much does you as a citizen of Carroll County want to invest in each industry? So all that information was totaled, and that's how we got these 3 right here of hospitality and agritourism, small business incubation, and manufacturing. And as you can all see right there on small business incubation, Westminster's very own Jeannie Bird was featured. All right. So for economic development tools, these are some of the economic tools and resources that the county consultant mentioned that could be of use. All right. So for There we go. So for revenue generation of the county, how can the county receive more funding for public services? So 42% of the revenue of the county comes from the income tax, while 44% comes from property taxes. So from what the consultant mentioned, the greatest impact on revenue comes from the number of new jobs, their average salary, and assessed property value. But remember, the county doesn't set the value, that's the State Department of Assessments and Taxation that does. And then also impact fee revenues have declined overall statewide and in Carroll County. And for more information, once again, if everybody's following along, that is on page 121 of the study. So for economic development tools revenue, and everybody knows what the impact fee is, and that is to offset impact incurred by development. The consultant added transportation impact fee considerations. But remember, all these recommendations, considerations, they're all just, or I should say, sorry, all the considerations in this document are recommendations and considerations for staff and the elected officials when going through the master plan process. So these are all recommendations for the master plan. And then the consultant provided the county information on what types of industries can bring a certain amount of revenue at the end of the study. So that is all that I have. The project has now been closed out. But if you have any questions, please let me know. But besides that, it was all wonderful seeing everyone again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions? I have a question.
When you looked at City of Westminster, did you take the city limits themselves or the maximum expansion of the city when you're looking at available acreage and determination for land use when you're doing the study?
I believe the consultant took in the actual city limits.
Okay, so you didn't look at potential annexations and what that might bring for development?
Not that I am aware of, but I will confirm that.
And then did they take into account the wastewater, the additional water that's been, because when you're looking at growth, if City of Westminster was down to 18,000 gallons, in case anybody was wondering, in perpetuity. And when you put that in perspective, that's 3 outbacks of water left. We just got the 150,000 gallons for the Gazelle well, and we're gonna get another 500 to 1.5 million in the wastewater program, which is gonna spur development in the city specifically. I was wondering if that was taken into account when you're looking at that growth pattern and
And that's a wonderful question, Mr. Depot. I need to check into that because I know the city of Westminster was consulted for one of the stakeholders, but I was not a part of that outreach to the city of Westminster. But I'll double check and get back in touch with you.
thank you.
Yes, Ms. Garrett.
There was, in your slide that said that there had been no new office space in the last 5 years, square footage.
Let me, I think you're correct.
I was
Yes.
just curious, so did that mean new construction and not new office space, like that it changed from a residence to an office or, you know, any of the change, anything else to change, or medical? There's no.
I am assuming that it meant new build. I don't want to assume.
Okay, I was just curious.
That would be my perception on that, not new build, but I can confirm that, but I don't want to assume that.
Yeah, I was just curious,
Well, there definitely was some medical.
that's why I was curious,
There's
there's,
conversions from other office to medical office.
Since '89.
We've approved a new one, but it hasn't been built yet. So we have one.
And then just talking business strictly.
Yeah, okay.
Strictly office space.
But I would agree,
Not medical.
usually it was a study of seeing medical office being the principal obvious office use. We're not seeing general office at all.
I just didn't know if that, when they say office, it included Baffert office. Office.
Yeah, I think office would be office, business office instead of, well, but like I said, I don't wanna assume what the consultant meant by that.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Not a problem.
Or planning geeks.
Yes.
I wanted to be accurate.
Yeah, Mark's all excited over there with all this planning stuff.
We're looking at potential development in the city with additional water coming in.
Yeah.
I think we have about 185 acres of undeveloped industrial land in the city. Just had an annexation of 85. We have about 100 acres to the north. We have a lot of potential. And they mentioned the ball redevelopment, which would be great to see someday, but it's a lot of potential.
It's just a great parking lot.
Yeah,
We've got more white vans than any
Yeah.
place in.
I was gonna say, Kristen, please.
nice storage here, nice storage facility for parking.
Yeah.
You know, as a citizen and as a business that I've been into approaching 40 years, one of the things that we hear in our business when larger companies want to come to town, we don't have the traffic, we don't have the people. We don't have the population to support things, we don't have the traffic count. You know, consequently, we have no interstate freeways like some of the adjoining counties have. And that really suppresses what we really can offer any kind of big time, you know, manufacturers. You look at your thing here, it's beautiful. Hospitality and agritourism, that's like a small income, that's a small, the lower end. If you're talking about generating money. And generating money particularly, you know, from the city and the county's perspective, tax dollars. Does that generate much tax dollars, in your opinion?
Well, and with that, I mean, that is what the citizens mentioned that they would like to see.
I know, but I'm saying, we gotta fund this thing. Somewhere, towns, jurisdictions, and the county has to fund this. And they can't fund it off of proposed new businesses and hospitality and agritourism. That's why all of our assessments have gone out of sight.
And as, like I mentioned to people, and Randy, with what you're saying, I mean, these are recommendations, and that's why having people's voices heard with the upcoming master plan process is so important, so people can have their voices heard about how they want the future of this county to look, you know, at least 10 years in the future.
Don't you? Well, I know, I'm just making a comment. It's all about paying the bill at the end of the day.
Would you consider a hotel hospitality?
Yes.
I mean, he said we didn't have one since 1989. It's very clear. I mean, look around.
35 years.
Right, like we are due for,
An upscale, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, look at what Owings Mills just did. That Marriott is booming.
We're trying.
When you have big events here, there's no hotel space for people. They have to stay, they actually have to go someplace else to stay. It's crazy.
In the study that we did when we were looking at the Stocksdale property for potential hotel, it's just that people actually stay in Owings Mills
That's true.
and stay and travel in the Westminster, even when they're visiting their children at the Daniels
That's true.
College, that, yeah, we just don't have that higher end or boutique hotel, whatever you want to term it.
And people want to stay in a safer area. So I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of the football teams are actually staying at that new hotel at the Marriott. When I was there was when I think the Chiefs were playing and the manager of the hotel was speaking with him and he was saying, now the football teams like to stay there because they're out of the city, but it's an easy drive to Baltimore. So they get all that influx of visits now. It's crazy.
That's true.
Right. So it makes me go back and think when the Ravens were practicing at McDaniel and sort of what that did for us back then.
The big takeaway is the city has water now, just throwing that out there, just.
I would think that develops, yeah.
Vacant industrial land.
Counties just Can't get anything. That recent.
And then from what the study mentioned, from vacant land, entirety would be the Freedom area down in, the Eldersburg area.
That's principally residential, is that, since the Freedom area, mostly residential?
I think the
Nature.
vacant, the majority of vacant land there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to go back and stuff like
Well,
that.
there's, when you look at the way the county developed, it's mostly municipalities. And it's gotta be a collaboration between the cities and
Mhm.
counties. Because the city's the one with the water and sewer here. And they're gonna be very protective of how that resource is used. And, but I think the one good thing is when you look at the mall site, really is ripe for something. I don't know what something should be, but it should be nice and big. Hotels with, upscale stores and all that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's where all the gamers go on Saturday. They're over there, there's more
Speaking
gamers
of
over there
water,
than cars.
Order and Bryce, we have 2 items from you.
Must be why Randy's here. Yeah, he's been a long time.
I'll be right back, but don't stop, you don't have to stop for me.
So I am bringing forward a water and sewer amendment for the city. This was a request that was actually sent to the city and the county by the developer. And also his engineer, Randy Backer with EPS. This is for, it's known as, at least when I used to know it as one large property, but now it's 2 properties that was owned by the Doles a couple of years back. But it's parcel 33 and parcel 11648, which is all, it's in the. No, I talked about it earlier, that name of the.
One of it.
Walnut Ridge, thank you. The Walnut Ridge subdivision, which backed up to Stonegate. This property in 21, actually, at the time, the Doles did come forward and requested for the property to come out of the water service area. And that went forward and was agreed upon. However, since now the city's water situation has gotten much better, as well as with Stonegate now being developed and almost completely finalized, this property has been repurchased and they're looking to develop the property with up to 19 units. So that'd be 4,465 gallons per day for both water and sewer. This development already has water within it, so that's easy to tie into, as well as with Stonegate sewer, there are easements behind property. So there's number parcel 33, there's easements that we can go into to get to the sewer side for Stonegate. So with all that being said, and looking at the analysis of everything and with the better situation that the city is now when it comes to water and when it comes to sewer, we are recommending that this, when we talk to our county commission, they get forward this, but also we are looking for a certification that this amendment for water and sewer is consistent with the city's master plan. And again, this is only bringing in 4,465 gallons. The previous amendment that was done removed water, remove more water. So the actuality with this being redeveloped for a little bit smaller footprint density wise, that is still only the third of what would have been used previously. So again, this is for both water and sewer to change the map for the city of Westminster as well as to change and update the tables for demand. And table wise, there's really, the demand wise, the city is still in very good shape. As well as for sewer, I think we talked before, sewer wise, the city's in really, really good shape. So there is no issue with bringing these two properties in for the water and sewer for them to be developed on water and sewer. And there's also with that neighborhood already currently being on water and now being backed up to the sewer, it makes at least it makes good sense. So we are again asking for a favorable consistency letter that this amendment is consistent with the water with the City of Westminster master plan. And then we will forward that to our planning commission. And then they will forward it overall to the state. And if you have any further questions, again, we have the developer and as well as Randy Backel here that can answer any further questions if you want to get a little bit more in depth. But at this time, they're looking to do up to 19 potential lots. That's what it's based on. And the count and the city's demand criteria is 235 gallons per unit. So they're able to, that is per the state. So that's a little bit less than what the state requires, which theirs is probably more accurate. The 250 that the state requires, I believe, is usually heavy-handed. It's more, they're looking on the safe side of things. When I've done my calculations, looking at properties is typically nowhere near the 250. Sometimes it's maybe 230 or less, but I think 235 is probably a good number to for any hiccups that may come about throughout the second. So again, I am requesting a favorable consistency letter that is consistent with the town or the city's master plan, 2009 master plan, which was revised in 2016, 2017. So again, if you have any questions, the packets that you have in front of you have the letter, the two letters from the developer. There's two separate owners, but they're each part of both of them. That is for those requests, as well as a schematic of both the parcels themselves, how they're just to look at the parcels where they are.
So the R20 zoning is current.
Yes.
Correct.
So how will the city deal with the properties that are adjacent to the city? Or they want water and sewer? You understand my question?
Annexation.
There's, it'll be a little bit.
They have to annex the property.
Is that your understanding?
Yes,
So this is
That's
the
not-
first,
It's not a problem?
to be annexed.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't become a problem.
No, I'm just saying, you understand that if this went through, you would have to annex the properties to get to.
So that's where this kind of all generated from. It may have been a mistake that this thing was ever taken out of the service area. Okay, we could debate that, but we're beyond that. And what Frank and the developer here came in for a small subdivision, a minor subdivision, and through the surprise to me, after in this business all these years, the town county, some kind of town county agreement that says you have to go into the city to do subdivision. So that's where we ended up today.
To get water and sewer,
Huh?
not to subdivide, to get water and sewer.
Annex, water and sewer and annex into town, requires you to be annexed into the cities. I was trying to get a hold of Mark today, and I think the only comment that Frank and I may have here is after really taking a second look at this, Mark, and the R20, if we continue to proceed with Price's recommendation here in staff report of being zoned R20, it really restricts us in terms of yield because of the shape of the project, shape of the properties, and the setbacks and the lot width. Price and I had a big discussion about this today. I mean, he's saying 19 lots. We're kind of thinking that maybe at this point in time, the zoning doesn't matter, that the zoning would become more important when we get to the annexation phase. Let me see, let me get the right ones here. Just to give you an idea, if I can approach the table here. This is kind of a small sketch here that our office did. And what a subdivision would look like. In the R10 zoning. Using the R10 setback. So with what our recommendation is 19 lots, still in the R10 zone, we're looking at 9 and 4, 13 lots. So I don't know how, Mark, how important is this right now being R10 or R20?
I think what Price is looking at is currently in the county, it's R20,000. So if you were to annex it and we were to establish a zoning district without needing a waiver, we just have a discussion, would come into the city as R20,000. So I think that's what Price is just looking at, do standard annexation and rezoning, and when we establish a zone, it's consistent R20 to R20. And I don't think Price is saying that you can't request an R10,000, that's just a waiver request, because it's increase in density. You go to R20,000 to R10,000, it's an increase in density, therefore the county might have to waive. Zoning, yeah. So I don't think that's what, and Price and I talked about this too, again, we're just looking at as it is today, it's R20,000. We had to get it into the water and sewer service area, standard practice for annexation from R20,000 to R20,000, but I don't think we're saying that we're gonna limit water usage or development. I agree, that's the next step. This is just for water and sewer service to get it into this system, into the amendment to amend.
So that's, the zoning is another thing.
That's, we're not establishing zoning right now. Price is looking at it as we were standard practice. It's not a steadfast, you're subject to R20,000 only. Once you get into service area, if they want to develop annexation is necessary at that point, then we have that further discussion of what do we zone it?
But you're saying that what you're proposing is actually less lots than he's talking about. Is that correct? Under a different zoning?
Well, with what we have under R10 zoning,
R20.
well, our sketch plans are for R10. And with the setbacks and the lot widths, this is what an R10 plan would look like.
Which is less lots.
It's
than what
even
he's talking
less
about.
lots than what
Yeah, so
Price is
I want to
proposing.
make sure I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
correct.
So in
Yeah, you
previous,
are.
yeah, in previous
You are.
conversations that we had, when we met with the city,
months or two ago, yeah.
yes. I think 19 was the number.
Maximum allowed by the acreage divided by 20,000
Right.
essentially. That's
Taken out, it's 30.
standard, yeah.
Right, so.
Taken out.
You're saying that if it was R20,000, you wouldn't be able to get as
We
many?
would not even.
Oh, because the setbacks changed.
The shape of that thing, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
It just provides more flexibility to actually get the number of units that the site could essentially handle. So again, I think that would be the argument of the annexation for a request from R20 to R10. Is that you're not asking for an increase in density for this, it's for design purposes, and that's.
One of the discussions Mark and I've had here past year or so is that these infill areas really is where we need more density. Not spread out somewhere out in the countryside where, these are areas that are.
I'm not opposed to more density inside the city limits. So.
Okay. Very good.
Chair, there is a letter that was provided to you in papers for your signature. Yes, somewhere in your paperwork, I promise downstairs. So what we're here to do, the county is asking for you to find that this is consistent with the master plan as well as giving the chair the authority to sign the letter as well.
I make a motion, should I?
Well, one quarter and one third.
Yes.
Do you have that motion written down anywhere?
No, unfortunately.
It's in
It's in his recommendation.
No, the motion is made, but it's,
That you find it consistent with the master plan, if you do. And that also you are giving the chair the authority to sign the consistency letter.
That's my motion, consistent with what she said.
It's been moved to second, all in favor?
What you said.
Oh, yes, like.
All right, so that, okay. Next item. Now. Please, the city liaison.
That's pretty much. Earlier, that's what I just did. That would give you an update for the county. The one big thing is still the housing study, which we're still looking to get, the master plan, that's gonna be the big update, the next probably year, or two. We can really get into that, obviously updating that aspect, as well as any amendments that may come about for water and sewer. So we'll do.
Great.
Sorry.
Any members, any, thank you. Meeting instead of 7:00.
I do have one thing to say after, we did have stuff.
So right now, the rule of procedure, I think, mentions 7:00, but there's nothing that says that you as a commission can't amend that and meet at noon.
It was
1:00.
probably would work for you.
I think the request is a 6 PM start versus 7.
I wouldn't stand away with anything.
So we have to make a motion.
I don't think you have to make a motion to amend.
I,
the rules
something I
procedure.
recommend is, if we do that, that we have. Dan's not here.
I think you can say we have dinner provided.
That sounds lovely.
Budget time on this.
Yeah, I really will have an issue.
I've only been doing it this way for 20 years, so I hate to go even to think about it. I can certainly. Yes.
You suggest any changes, right?
Well, do you want staff to put that on the agenda next time and actually come back with rules and procedures as amended for 6:00, so then.
Yeah, I think we'll have time to think about it.
Yeah.
And I do have one thing, next month they're going to be elections. Just letting you know.
And, I'm sorry, I do have something. Jay Voigt, the ex-zoning administrator for the county, now retired, was just appointed to the planning and zoning commission. He could not make it tonight because he had another meeting, but he will be here next meeting.
I would like to. Try the chairmanship of this election, so bring you all the heads up.
We had this discussion.
Give you about it, you see where you got.
Yeah, and then something happened.
Yes, I recall, I was trying to dispel to him. He said, "Do I'll do it."
About a year ago, about what else?
The process, yes.
We did.
So we just have to finalize what we talked about last year. Okay.
Well, it's, well, you all have. All right, then we.
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn, I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, move to second, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
You have to do that because I put my photo on. That's